About 5 years ago, a British TV show called Love, Don't Judge featured a glowing profile of 5 people, 1 woman and 4 men, who were in a polyamorous relationship with each other. And clips from the episode went viral, and the 5 lovebirds quickly became the faces of polyamory. And they are interesting faces indeed. Watch.
This is Tori. She fell in love with Travis. And Ethan. And Mark. And Chris. Their 4-way relationship is working wonders for them.
The relationship could best be described by having Tori as the hub and all of us are spokes on a giant wheel.
But not everyone understands the dynamic.
I was like, oh, you're kidding, that you're joking.
How will this poly relationship cope with a further addition to the family?
Yes, how will they all cope with the new addition to the family? Well, unfortunately, we got an answer to that question rather quickly, and the answer is horrific. Only 5 weeks after the baby was born, the baby you just heard about there, Ethan Balcom, one of the 5 musketeers, was arrested for abusing the infant so viciously that she had severe injuries to her ribs, lungs, limbs, internal organs, and had several brain bleeds as well. Now, Balcom reportedly told police that he injured the baby because he was frustrated that she was preventing him from sleeping. So it turns out that the man who volunteered to be a part of this grotesque, unstable, and dysfunctional polygamous relationship is also himself a grotesque, unstable, and dysfunctional person, which should come as no surprise. But it would be a surprise to you if you listen to the media, which has been in the midst of a full-court press over the past few days to promote this kind of dysfunction to the masses. So first up, and this again is all in the past week as we start off 2024. First up to the plate was the New York Times with an article about, according to the headline, a polyamorous mom who had a big sexual adventure and found herself. Now, this polyamorous mom has apparently just published a memoir titled More, a Memoir of Open Marriage. Because, needless to say, what the world needs most right now is yet another memoir written by a middle-aged woman about how she embarked on a quest of self-discovery, and the quest involved nothing but, having sex with a bunch of random dudes. That's exactly what we need right now. There's a memoir like this published every 45 minutes or so, and they're all the same. All of these women are interchangeable. Their experiences are as uninteresting as they are unoriginal, and their insights, what little insights they have, are equal parts cliched and bogus. Now, next, there was a big piece in USA Today declaring in its opening paragraph, open relationships are having a moment. Polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, and similar terms are becoming a bigger part of our cultural lexicon. But perhaps the most known type of open relationship is swinging, and swingers are having a moment too. Just ask Kylie George, a swinger who chronicles her journey on Swing Talk, a hashtag with more than 2.6 billion views on TikTok. The community also connects via symbols. An upside-down pineapple is the most viral and well-known. George recently married her partner, and the pair were able to celebrate with all of their Swing Talk creator friends and communicate within a Discord group of more than 30,000 members. They plan events, educate, provide resources, and enjoy a safe communal space. Now, you could have probably gone your whole life and been happy not knowing that something called Swing Talk exists, but now you know, for better or worse. And that leads finally to New York Magazine with its cover story for its latest issue, promising a practical guide to polyamory for, quote, the curious couple. Now, before we read any of the article in this issue of the magazine, we should note the cover of the magazine, which you can see right here. And you can see the words polyamory in big, bold block letters, along with a picture of 4 cats embracing. And it kind of makes you think, why did they choose cats for the cover photo? I mean, there must have been some thought put into this. They must have discussed this at some length, like what's the cover photo going to be for this our big issue about polyamory. And they reviewed all the possible options and decided to go with cats, which is an interesting choice, considering the more obvious choice would be a photo of an actual polyamorous couple. I'm sure they could find plenty of plenty of polyamorous people who are, willing to pose for the picture. After all, these people are not nearly as camera shy as we all wish they were, but you could see why they didn't go that route. And for one thing, polyamory represents mating habits more often found in animals than in humans. By pushing this on us, they are pushing us to behave like beasts. And that could be the message here. But I think more likely they realize that most polycules in real life are a horror to behold. We saw what happened the last time they gave us a face of polyamory, and they don't want to make that mistake again. So they'd rather not show you the kinds of people who are actually doing this, so they show you cats instead. Anyway, once we move past the cats, we're told the story of a married couple named Nick and Sarah, who have chosen the polygamous lifestyle. And here's what it says, just right off the bat. Quote, "Non-monogamy is really just designing the bounds of what we want in our relationship and what we're comfortable with," Nick says. For Nick and Sarah, the relationship design looks like this. Nick and Sarah are married. Sarah has had multiple other committed relationships while married to Nick. Currently, Nick has a girlfriend, Anna, who has a husband, Alex, and Alex has other people with whom he explores his desires. The easiest way to explain all this might be in the love language of most ethically non-monogamous people. Google Calendar. Sarah and Nick share a calendar. Nick and Anna share a calendar. Alex and Anna share a calendar. Sarah and Anna do not share a calendar, but are aware of who has Nick's time on any given day. Same for Nick and Alex. They are Sarah and Nick and Anna and Alex, a modern polycule, living, laughing, loving, and doing a lot of therapy. Oh, I bet. Yes, what a joy this must be. If you want a date night with your wife, you have to put it in her Google Calendar and hope she doesn't already have plans with her boyfriend that day. That's the idea here. Now, this article in New York Magazine goes on for thousands of words. The author and the people she's interviewing are under the impression that their story is an epic, fascinating adventure. In reality, it is, again, the same story all of these people, all these other polyamorous groupings are telling. It's the exact same story. Sarah, the wife, says stuff like, "I was on a journey to reconnect with my body and learn about myself as a sexual being." As we've seen, women like this, they love to talk about their sexual dalliances as journeys, right? As if she's Frodo trekking across Middle Earth, to destroy the ring in Mordor. And not just a middle-aged woman having sex with different dudes. And then we're told that Nick, the husband at first, struggled with the whole his wife has sex with other guys thing. If you can imagine, it was a little bit hard at first. But Sarah helped him very generously to work through these feelings. And at one point, we're told when Nick was feeling especially jealous, Sarah asked him, "How do you need to feel loved by me?" Which is a pretty good question for a wife to ask her husband or vice versa. The problem is that apparently stop having sex with other guys was not an acceptable answer to that question. And, because why is that? Well, it's important that the couples in open marriages or open relationships support each other. And supporting each other always means, in their world, bottling up your feelings while your spouse has one affair after another. Which is to say, supporting your spouse in this case means not being a human. It means not responding in a human, natural way to the fact that your spouse is serially unfaithful. Last year, because of you, Preborn's network of clinics saved over 58,000 babies. And thanks to all who made it possible, let's celebrate by hearing Dominique's story. Here it is.
I was just kind of like, Lord, if this is, if this is the way, let me know. If this is not the way, give me a sign, before I walk through these doors. And as I was getting ready to walk up the steps and touch the doorknob, a guardian angel, and he just told me, he was like, "Baby, you don't have to go in there." And he was like, "I know someone that can help him." Just to see the development of a baby that small, and I say baby because, he had little arms and legs, and it was actually a human, and to see that and to have that physical and that contact once you look at that, I think it just pulls on your heart a little.
Each of these babies are truly miraculous, and every day Preborn celebrates 200 miracles. For just $28 a month, you can sponsor an ultrasound and help save a life. When a mother sees her baby on the ultrasound, hears his heartbeat, that child's chance at life is doubled. So let's join together and help mothers choose life. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Matt. That's preborn.com/Matt. Now, if you're wondering, though, what this kind of support looks like in practice, here's a video from a popular polyamory TikTok account called Remodeled Love. And in the video, we see what is apparently a husband gushing over his wife's latest boyfriend. Unfortunate choice of words there, perhaps, but anyway, watch.
What I was just saying is that this man gets it, okay? Because you are a f***ing catch. And he makes an effort. He puts intentionality into his communication. He comments on your posts and your stuff. He makes plans. He wants to be around. He's proactive. He's got a great attitude just in general. And he's just a delight to be around. And you deserve someone. And he's a pretty great lover, apparently, as well. So these are all of the things that you've been wanting. And I'm just telling Stargazer here over text that while you've had a lot of great partners, there's always been crucial pieces of intentionality missing, but this man gets it.
Now, if you didn't know any better and you saw that video, you would think that this was the woman's gay best friend and not her husband. And then when you're told the context, you realize that your original assumption was still basically correct for all intents and purposes. Now, you may be asking yourself, are any of these people actually happy living this way? Because again, if you're a normal person and you see all this and you hear all this, you think, well, that just sounds totally miserable. Like it's like a walking nightmare, a waking nightmare every single day. Who would want to live this way? That polyamorous quintuple that we talked about at the start of the monologue, they did their best to appear happy. And then a few months later, one of them landed in jail for nearly beating the woman's 5-month-old child to death. The guy in that video we just played a moment ago is trying his best to appear happy and quote-unquote supportive. But if you listen to these people speak for longer than 20 seconds, which is not an easy task, I admit, you'll find that their deep, profound unhappiness eventually comes seeping through, and soon it's the only thing you can see when you look at them. So the facade of happiness lasts for about 20 seconds, and then if you listen for longer than that, all the rest of it is, dear God, we are desperately unhappy. Indeed, even in these propaganda pieces meant to promote polyamory, still the majority of the word count is devoted to explaining how the participants deal with their resentment and jealousy. So jealousy, by their own account, is an ever-present feature of their lives. Now, that's not the case in a healthy monogamous relationship. Okay, in a healthy monogamous marriage, which is to say a real marriage, jealousy really shouldn't even come up. If you trust your spouse is faithful, nothing to be jealous about. But in these people's lives, it's just every single second of the day. But they have their ways of explaining that away. So back to the New York Magazine article again briefly. Quote, celebrating your lover while they marry their partner, while supporting your lover's lover's lover while they go through it, is an example of what Anna calls living life on hard mode. There's a real sense of connection that I think comes from doing hard things. And I'm someone who loves to do hard things, Sarah explains further. Some people like to run marathons. Some people like to run marathons. We like to do polyamory, complex relationship stuff. Sarah's favorite activity for the two of us to do is couples therapy, Nick says, smiling. Navigating the relationship dynamics is kind of generally a fun thing for us. It's like for relationship nerds. There's a lot of different puns you could make, and Sarah talking about she likes to do hard things, but we're not going to get into that. And this is another tangent I'm not going to get into right now again, but here's more proof that most therapists are completely useless. I mean, these two are apparently seeing a couples therapist like recreationally, and this couples therapist has, we can assume, given them advice that does not include stop engaging in serial adultery. So they are a couple that is constantly in a state of adultery, and they're going to a couples therapist. And given the fact that they keep going back to the therapist, we can assume the therapist has never once said to them, one thing that could make things better for you guys, stop having sex with people that are not each other. But aside from the fact that therapy is so often a scam, what we see here is the familiar attempt to paint sin and failure and selfishness as complexity. Their open marriage is making them both miserable, but that's only because it's hard, and it's hard in the same way that running a marathon is hard, they say. And the analogy is interesting because, of course, running a marathon is exactly what they are not doing. Okay, a monogamous marriage can much more accurately be compared to a marathon. Now, I don't really like that comparison because a marathon to me just seems totally miserable from start to finish, which marriage is not. But at least marathons take commitment and perseverance. And those are the two things that polyamorous people absolutely avoid at all costs. Being polyamorous isn't hard in the sense that marathons are hard. These kind of relationships are hard in the sense that it's hard to be a heroin addict, in the sense that it's hard to be a pathological liar because you have to keep up with all the lies. It's hard not because you're taking on a challenge or you're doing something difficult but worthwhile, but because you are a weak person following your most base desires, entirely unwilling to control your urges or strive for virtue. That's the kind of hard we're talking about. Your life is hard not because you're doing hard things, but because you refuse to do hard things. It is hard in the way that it's hard to be weak, not in the way that it's hard to be strong. Those are very different kinds of difficulty. And the difference is that there is no true happiness, there's no true joy available at the other end of the difficulties that you are experiencing as weak and unfaithful people. Unlike if you are strong and virtuous and trying to be committed and faithful and a good spouse, there's hardships and difficulties that come in that sense in family life, but at the other end of it is immense joy. Whereas with this kind of hardship and difficulty, at the other end of it is just more hardship and difficulty. So a monogamous marriage, which is to say, again, a real marriage, will have hardships, sure. You're not going to be on cloud nine every moment of the day until death do you part. That's just not reality. But there is immense joy available to you if you both work for it. In the case of the non-monogamous marriage, the open relationship, which is to say the fake marriage, there's no joy ever available. The most you can hope for is momentary pleasure, which is something you could have gotten in monogamy as well. So there's nothing you can get out of it that's good that you couldn't have gotten with a real marriage. There's lots of bad stuff that you will get out of it that you would not have gotten out of it had you had a real marriage. In a real marriage, in a monogamous marriage, you could have had the pleasure and the joy if you had had the discipline and integrity to go get it. So there's no doubt that these non-monogamous groupings are full of absolutely miserable, self-hating, jealousy-riddled people trying to find a way to be happy in an arrangement that churns out nothing but despair and anxiety every single day. That's the reality for the poor fools on the ground who are trying to actually live like this, trying to live like beasts instead of human beings, like cats instead of people. And by the way, by focusing on the unhappiness of the adults involved, I don't mean to suggest that their suffering is the most dire side effect or consequence of polyamory. No, as we saw at the top, by far the worst thing is the untold misery and trauma and suffering and abuse and worse suffered by the children who are brought into and brought up in these chaotic, degenerate, and dysfunctional environments. So as always, children are the real victims here. But what about the elites who are pushing this? What do they get out of it? Why has the media, jumped on board the polyamory train all at once with such coordination? Well, because this is the next step in the destruction of the nuclear family. Some of us conservatives, not enough of us, but some of us, predicted 10 years ago that this is where it would all lead. After Obergefell, there are some of us who said, this is what's happening next. And it's happening. We said that the assault on marriage would not simply end there. It would continue to the next destination. Of course, we were laughed at and we were accused of engaging in a slippery slope fallacy. But as always, it turned out that the slope was as slippery as we said. And the only thing fallacious about it are the arguments presented by the people who are trying to expand the definition of marriage into oblivion. So that's where the fallacy is. But the slippery slope is real. Now, don't give us too much credit for being right, though. It didn't take a prophet or a genius to see this coming. The marital union has two essential dimensions. It is fundamentally, in principle, procreative, and it is monogamous and committed. once they waged an assault on one dimension, it was only a matter of time before they moved on to the next. And it really didn't even matter which one they started with, because the end result is the same. So wherever it began, we know where they want it to end, with the death of the family, which has always been the number one enemy and the greatest of all threats to the leftist elites who run our country. They cannot enact their agenda and exercise total control over a culture that is comprised of strong, loving, individual family units where children are raised by caring mothers and protective fathers. They cannot control. If that's the way society is set up, there's nothing they could do. The elites, for all their money and power, would be rendered nearly impotent if that's the kind of society we had, which is why they have to tear down the family, and have been trying to do so for many decades. And tragically, they have largely succeeded. They have succeeded anyway on a general level. But I can tell you, they have not torn down my family, and they never will. And hopefully they haven't torn down yours either. Whatever you do, don't let them. Hey YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.